Okay, so the recording and the transcription have started, and you'll be able to get this on my YouTube site within the next couple of days or so. Okay, so last week we started talking about governance and what it meant, what we were doing, what it involved. This week I want to keep talking about governance, but I also want to start us thinking about why good governance is important. There's no point having good governance if it doesn't make the organisation better. That's kind of the point. We are trying to always make an organisation better. And of course, better is an incredibly subjective word. So it will depend what the organisation is. It will depend what they're trying to do as to what better means. So better is part of what you need to define as part of your governance structure. In other words, it's going to be part of your report as well. What is it that makes this a good organisation? So, as part of that, a clear part of every governance structure is ensuring that you get better. And you'll remember that from the thing that I showed you last week, or from some of the things that I showed you last week. We talked about governance, and we had talked about what might come out of that, how governance might work, how you might arrange that for the organisation. But we'd also said that as part of that governance, those in that position would define what the aims see this fight for dominance between what gets to open things. It bugs me every day. So we said that part of the aim of governance was to decide what the aims of the organisation were. And we talked a wee bit about mission statements and aims and all that kind of stuff. And as usual, one of the things about aims is it's about getting better. Nobody ever has an aim of, yeah, let's not change anything ever. And if you do, you should really raise your horizons just a wee bit. Most organisations want to get better, and that's what we saw last week when we looked at governance. The people in governance had come up with a plan that said, this is what we are going to do, and importantly, this is how we are going to measure it. How do you know if you're getting better if you don't know what you're measuring? So before you start on any of these change issues, you have to decide what you're going to do, what the aim is, and whether or not you have reached that aim by having a measure that says, yes, we've done it or we've not. So this is a local council, so it's like, how good are the roads? Have we built new homes for our citizens? Does the place look better? I mean, that's a very fuzzy aim. But it's one of those weird ones where you know about it. You can't describe why a place is better, if the appearance is better, but you know if it is. So, it's about governing, it's about giving aims, and it's about getting better. Now, later on, we'll see some of those frameworks that we talked about before, COBIT and ITIL, also talk about getting better. So in the same way as last week, a lot of these things appear in lots of different places. This idea that we get better appears everywhere, not surprisingly. because it's a key component of any organisation. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about getting better. And getting better isn't a big bang affair. You don't get better and stop. The idea of getting better is it's a continual process. You start somewhere, you get better. That's then your new baseline, and you decide that you want to move on from there and get better from that. We're going to use an improvement process called PDCA. As I say, you'll see similar things pop up later on when we're looking at other frameworks and other ways to approach things, but they are doing the same sort of thing. So we're doing plan, do, check, act. When we look at COBIT later on, it's called plan, build, run, monitor, but it does the same sort of thing. Others add in extra stuff. OPDCA. So the PDCA that we have is plan, decide what we want to do it, check that it's had the effect that we wanted. Has this change made our organisation better? So we check that it's made it better. And then we act. And that act might be, yes, that has done us better. Well, let's do more of it and see if we can get even better. No, that hasn't worked. Maybe we should back off and redo it. It's worked a wee bit, so maybe we can take a bit of that and a bit of something else and do something slightly different. It doesn't really matter. You still go through this cycle. You plan something, you do it, you check what's come out of that, and then you act on that, which means you're into your new plan. I always have issues with the kind of organisation that doesn't do this bit. It doesn't do the check. So it's a good thing to have long-term plans. So lots of organisations will have things like 5-year plans. You saw that last week. It's a 5-year plan. This is where we want to be in 5 years. Absolutely fine, nothing wrong with that. It only becomes a problem if you make this plan, you do stuff, and you only check it 5 years down the line. That's not how it's supposed to work. Can you imagine being in an organisation doing a whole pile of stuff and not actually bothering to see if it's actually made a difference? So long-term plans are important, they must be there, but that does not absolve you from short-term responsibilities of looking to see what's going on in the organisation and checking to make sure to see if there's anything that we have to alter, change, add in, take away, whatever it happens to be. Which is why you do get the other versions that I spoke about, the one that starts with O, because that's observe. Look and see what's been happening. Has the plan worked? Is it working? Could it ever work? Observe what's going on and then go through this cycle. Everyone happy with that so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So as I said, you need a plan, but you also need specific goals. Not just general goals, specific goals for that plan. There's no point saying, oh, our plan is to sell more from our shop. Well, no kidding. If your plan is to instigate direct marketing to previous customers to encourage them to buy again, and to then check your sales specifically for those previous customers to see whether that has in fact increased sales to them, then fine. That's a plan. You do something, you check to see it works, and then you act. But just saying, yeah, sell more. What? It's not a plan that way. It doesn't have any sort of output. It's just something you're saying. So you need to set up the plan and at the same time set up how you will measure the success of that plan. Not later on. You can't cheat. You can't start the plan and go, oh, this has made this change. That's definitely what I wanted. Now, don't get me wrong. You can start a plan and things can happen and they're actually really good, but you didn't expect them. And you take it, absolutely. But don't pretend that that's what you wanted to do in the first place. So when you set the plan, set your goal. I am going to drive to Edinburgh. And to do that, I am going to get in my car and start. What road are you going to take? I don't know. I'll get there eventually. You might do, and you might have a couple of nice days out in Stirling and Perth and Dundee and wherever along the way. And you may by chance end up in Edinburgh. But it doesn't mean that was what you tried to do if you just get in your car and drive. So, figure out what you want to do, figure out what your objective is. Once you've done that, you're into the do part. You can carry out the plan. Have you done what you said you would do? Have you reached the objective that you wanted to reach? Now, I said earlier that I'm happy with long-term plans. They absolutely should be part of any good organisation's planning procedures. But a huge 5-year all-encompassing plan isn't always the best way to go. It's like anything else. If you're doing anything at all, it's probably easier to do a wee bit, and then another wee bit, and then another wee bit, until you've done the whole thing. There is without doubt a Chinese proverb that covers it, and I'm sure you all know it. If not, you can research it and put it in the chat. So take smaller steps. Tend not to go for the big bang. My sense of time has completely gone during COVID. So I'm going to say about 3 years ago. A bank put in all new systems. They'd taken over another bank. Not surprisingly, there was a lot of computing involved. Lots of computing in the back end to, check people's accounts, reconcile them at the end of the day, make sure they could get access, all that kind of stuff. But when they'd taken over this bank, they were still using the previous owner's systems. They didn't want to do that because they were paying the previous owners lots of money and they wanted to not pay them lots of money, which is fine. They came up with a plan to address it, which is fine. How they chose to do it was less than fine, because they implemented a whole new system, absolutely everything for the bank. I need hardly say they didn't test it properly. And then one night at midnight, they just went and clicked over to the new system. This did not go well. customers couldn't get access to their accounts. Direct debits weren't paid. None of the systems worked properly. The bank lost a lot of money, and it lost a lot of goodwill. Not surprisingly, if you have a new computer system and you have rolled that out to your customers, and then nearly 2 million customers can't get access to their account, you've got nearly 2 million people who are not happy with you. And I can't say I'm in the least surprised. Any TSB customers in the meeting? Anybody remember this happening now? So they planned that they were going to move to a new system. They did move everyone to a new system. But what they didn't do was do smaller steps. So, move one system at a time. Move the home banking system, and then move the in branch system, and then move, whatever it is. No, they did everything at once, didn't check it, and then when they put it in, they had a big issue. So don't do your stuff like that. When you're doing things, do small things. And then if it goes wrong, it's not a big issue. You might have seen when you go online occasionally, maybe you'll go into Amazon or somewhere, some other shopping site, and the web page will look slightly different. Now, we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of how bad the Amazon homepage is, particularly given how much money they make. But occasionally you'll see a difference. They'll perform A/B testing. Have you come across that as a term?
I don't think so. It does sound familiar, but I couldn't tell you what it is.
Okay. If you have a new system going in, you might be convinced it's the best thing. And all your pals might be convinced it's the best thing. The question is it the best thing? So a good way of checking that out is to do this A/B testing. So if you've got a website and you think that by changing the login to 15-point Arial black on yellow and putting it in the top left, more people will log in and you'll be able to track them rather than having anonymous browsing. So beforehand, it was in 12-point blue on the top right. You've done all your research. Bigger text, of course, that's going to draw more people's attention. What's the colour scheme that is easiest for us to pick out? It's black on yellow. Of course we're going to use that. But are we sure that it's going to work? Well, fortunately for something like that, it's really cheap to check. You make two versions of the website, one with login at the top left and one with login at the top right. And when people come to your website, they are served a random version, A or B, top left or top right. And then you check, did the change you make work? And if it did work, fantastic, you implement it for everybody. If it didn't work, that's annoying, but at least only half of your customers were inconvenienced. And you revert to your original. So you can do lots of small A/B tests. What happens if you want to implement new security measures? Do you immediately go for Oh, what's a Microsoft app called where if you sign into a Microsoft account, it sends a thing to your phone to confirm it was you?
Authenticator.
Authenticator, thank you. If you decide that you want to implement that, is your plan to do it for everybody overnight? Or is your plan to do it for a small number of people to iron out the bugs, to see how well people get on? It's not a trick question. Which would you do?
Increment a bit at a time.
Sounds
Test
sensible
it.
to me. Test it. See what issues people have. There's still going to be some people out there that don't have a phone that runs Authenticator. It's too old or for whatever reason. And they simply can't get in. Some people may be upset that you've asked them to use their personal phone to log into work systems without checking with them. There could be all sorts of issues. So when you're doing the plan, you might want to do smaller steps, check the outcome before you move on. Always check. Always figure out where you are just now and then where you are after you implement your change. Make sure you understand clearly what the change is and whether it has helped you towards your destination or whether it hasn't properly worked. Part of that, of course, is making sure that your tests themselves are correct. Are you checking the right things? What is it that is important in terms of your organization to make this work? Thank you. Tea time. Cheers. So make sure that your tests are appropriate to what you're trying to do. So you make the plan, you carry out the plan, you check whether it's working, and then you act. Make change to the process, reevaluate, and make sure that it's working the way you want. And if it's not, change it. I said earlier that PDCA was sometimes OPDCA. Well, sometimes it's not PDCA for plan, do, check, act. Sometimes it's plan, do, check, adjust. Because you're not carrying out a new plan as such, you're making tweaks. You're adjusting your original plan. So we have this iterative process. You go in, you make a plan, you act on it, you do it, you check it, and then you act based on the outcomes from those checks, which will probably involve a new plan, which means you do something else, and then check the outcomes of that, and then act based on the outcomes of that check, which will be a new plan. And that can happen as many times as is required until you solve your problem. And there's no guarantee of what that number is. Probably about the only guarantee there is that you won't get it the first time round. Everyone happy with that so far? So I said you probably won't get first time, but here's the thing, even if you do, even if what you've done has had exactly the outcomes that you needed, you don't stop. You don't think, yeah, that's fine, I've done it, I'm going to retire. You think, no, okay, well, we've made that change, it has been successful. What's next? You guys are looking for an improvement. You have one DOS attack a month. Sorry, one DOS attack a day. So you make plans and you make changes to make that one DOS attack a week. Do you go, that's fine, we only get attacked once a week? Or do you think, oh, hang on, can we get better? Can we move to once a month? If your uptime is 99%, do you just sit back and go, fantastic, 99%, that sounds great? Or do you actually remind yourself that there's 365 days in a year and that 99% uptime means that you've got 3.65 days a week, days a year where you're not available? Okay, maybe we can get to 99.9. And then you get to 99.9 and you go, aren't we fantastic? We're only down half a day a year. And you go, half a day, that still sounds quite a lot. Okay, maybe we can do 99.99. And you keep going and keep going so that your previous target is your baseline and you get better and better. This is what all organizations should be doing. And if they're not, then you have to ask yourself why they're not trying to get better. Why wouldn't an organization try to get better? I would ever say, yeah, I'm happy. Now that can lead to some very difficult conversations, some very difficult changes, some big issues in terms of change, in terms of people, but of course that happens a lot. What's important is to manage those properly so that people understand, and people do tend to understand if the changes are fair, are clear, will lead to an outcome that everyone can understand, and everyone pretty much buys into the change. So it's not easy, but it can be done. Okay, we're happy with that so far.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. So that's been over 50 minutes. So I think that's probably break time. We'll come back and we will talk about the 5 whys. So it's a technique for getting better. But in the meantime, what we will do is take a wee break. So unless anyone has any questions just now, he says, pausing for dramatic effect.
No, not my part. It's well explained, so.
Okay. In that case, what we'll do is we'll take a break. Those of you who haven't yet signed up to Teams, that would be your cue to go do it. And I'll see you all in 10 minutes time. Okay, thanks folks.
Cheers.
Thanks, Dominic. Okay, and we're back. One of the things I was doing when we were away was checking. Not everyone has joined the team yet. You absolutely have to. Do not forget that part of what we'll be doing today is moving into breakout rooms to discuss this. If you haven't joined our team, we can't put you into a breakout room. The other thing you can't do is complete the assignment, which I have just posted. Some of you will be seeing that appear on your screens right now. Okay, so if you haven't joined, you need to join, and you need to do that now. There's at least 3 of you in this meeting who have not yet joined. Weirdly, your names all start with A. Those of you who have joined the team but didn't complete last week's assignment, I've also had that returned to you so that you can do them both for next week, and you absolutely positively have to do them both. We'll start having chats with anybody who's not submitting by next week. Okay, so moving on, unless anyone has thought of any questions since we took our break, we'll move on. And what I want to talk about is a way that we can approach issues. It's all very well saying, oh, make a plan, get better. But sometimes you have to understand what's wrong before you can try and get better. I mean, some things are fairly routine. You own a shop, you want to sell more. It doesn't take a lot of soul searching to come to that conclusion. Some things, though, are a bit more subtle. Things might be going wrong and you don't know why. And one of the techniques that's used to get to the root of an issue is this thing called the 5 whys. The idea is that you start with the problem. You run a delivery company, and the delivery company is continually getting complaints over late deliveries. So you get people together and you say, why are we getting these complaints? So there's your first why. Why are people complaining that deliveries are late? Is it that they're not late and they've been given the wrong information? Nope. Is it that they are late because they've been given a time and we haven't kept to that? Yes, it is. Okay. Why? Why are these things late? Well, when we look at the people that were late, they were all on one run and we're all from one van, and the van broke down. There we go, case closed, everybody go home. Fix the van, we're done. No. The reason it's called the 5 whys is because anecdotally, that's how many whys you'll need to actually get to the root of the problem. It is very tempting to go, oh yeah, van broke down, fantastic, we're done. But you need to keep exploring. Sorry, the sun's just come out. I just need to close my curtain. I really hate this. Whenever I get good weather, I'm not allowed to see it because it's too bright. So you can't just say, van broke down, that's the reason. We need to start thinking more clearly about the problem, start trying to get to the root of the problem. And the obvious first question to ask is, well, why did the van break down? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's easy. The battery was dead. Oh, that's fine. We just replace the battery and away we go. No, hang on. Why was the battery dead? Well, the battery was dead, we found out after we replaced the battery, because the alternator, which is a thing attached to the engine and generates electricity and recharges the battery, wasn't working. Oh, excellent. So the van broke down because the alternator wasn't working. Let's fix the alternator. No, hang on. Why was the alternator not working? Well, there's a belt between the alternator and the generator. Between the alternator and the engine that transmits the physical motion of the engine to physical motion to create electricity in the alternator, and that belt had broken. Oh, so we just fix the belt. Stop it. No. It's not just about fixing the first thing you come across. It's about trying to figure it out. So why is the belt broken? Well, it turns out the belt was frayed and useless and had never been replaced. Why wasn't it replaced? Well, it turns out there's a maintenance schedule for all mechanical vehicles where things should be checked, replaced, whatever. And we hadn't been doing it. Why not? Because we don't have a process in place to maintain the vehicles according to the manufacturer's service schedule. So we've come quite a long way. Why are customers' deliveries late? And we end up with, because we're not maintaining our vehicles properly. And there was more than 5 whys in there. I wasn't counting them, but there was certainly more than 5. But there was one important why missing. Anyone want to take a stab at why he was missing? And why the why was missing?
Why they didn't have a maintenance schedule in place.
Yep. Whose fault was it that we don't have a maintenance schedule in place? We don't do that one. That's not what this technique is for. And in fact, if that's how it's seen, it doesn't work. It would be a lot easier for people to stop at the replace battery. Oh, batteries break. We replaced it. We're done. It wasn't anybody's fault. These things happen. Well, all of that is true, but it wasn't actually the problem that we were having. But if people see it, that when we get to the end of this process, they'll say, oh, it was Fred's fault that we didn't have a service schedule. Then Fred will not be happy joining in this process because he'll see it as a witch hunt just to come after him. So we always stop before the whose fault is it. It's not about finding fault or assigning blame. It's about figuring out the issue and fixing it. Come on, computer, you can do it. There we go. Okay, so we go through the whole pile of whys. We work our way through the chain until we get to an outcome. The outcome was we don't have a process. So, thankfully, we have a technique for that. We need to put in a plan. We need to calculate an appropriate schedule for servicing. We need to do it. Implement that routine maintenance schedule. And that might have knock-on effects. If you're going to maintain a van, it's going to be off the road for, say, half a day. Do we need to hire in a van for that day? Do we buy another van to cover? How are we going to work it? Then we do a check. Are the vehicles still breaking down for that reason? So let me give you another hypothesis. Exactly the same thing. It hasn't worked. Customers are still complaining that their deliveries are late. Why is it? The battery is dead. Why? The alternator wasn't functioning. Why? The alternator belt had broken. Why? The alternator belt wasn't, in this case, beyond its useful life. It's just that the manufacturer's useful life made some assumptions. You always make assumptions. And they had assumed that this van was going to be used for 8 hours a day. Our delivery vans are out from 6 in the morning to 10 at night. So they're out for 16 hours a day, twice as much as recommended by the manufacturer. So we change our plan. We calculate an appropriate maintenance schedule. If they told us to change the belt every year and we're using it twice as much as we thought we would, then let's change them every 6 months. Re-implement that new maintenance schedule and check whether it's working. So we can go through the process to make sure these things are getting to where we need them to be. And you see in this slide, act and adjust are in the same line. Because it's not a new plan, we're doing what we should do, we're happy that's what we should do, but we're tweaking it, we're adjusting it a wee bit, just to make sure it works for us. Original plan, follow the manufacturer's set schedule. New plan, make it more rigorous because we're asking for more from our vans. Everyone happy with that so far?
I've just got a quick question. You said that you would stop before, like, point the finger or assigning blame, but is that not where the accountability part of the governance would come in as well? That somebody would be accountable for that happening?
Yes, it would. And the plan would have an owner. I think we covered that last week when we looked at some of the documents. We said this is owned by.
Right.
So the plan would be owned by the person that's in charge of vans. If we then have an issue, that then becomes an issue not of the van breaking down and us not realising we had a problem. The accountability comes in when we know that we've got a problem, we've got a plan in place to address the problem, someone has been assigned that task, but they haven't done it. So accountability is still in there, but you have to be careful that accountability isn't used just for blaming. Because if nobody in the organisation has thought about this, and if the person doing maintenance had only ever been asked to fix things as they broke, and I realise this is a simplification, there may be all sorts of other things come in, and every situation is unique. What I'm trying to say is, Gordon, you could be right. that it could be that person's fault, but often it isn't, and it actually wasn't anyone's fault. So up until the point that the organisation put in that plan and assign it an owner, then I don't think you should assign blame. However, once it has been clearly assigned to someone and they don't do it, then that's a different thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you can't blame somebody for something that nobody knew about.
That's kind of what I was trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if nobody had thought about it, then it's everybody's fault. But as soon as it's your issue and it's assigned to you, then yes, that's fine. You take accountability, you have responsibility, not a problem with that. But for this particular technique, it's about trying to figure out what went wrong when nobody thought this would go wrong and nobody understood it. And in fact, it makes sense for the whole organisation because it could have gone entirely the other way. Why are the packages late? Because the person scheduling them did a bad job and didn't put them on the right vans. Excellent, blame them. And we didn't find the actual problem. And that's part of the thing about this. It's about making the organisation better. And if people are sitting there going, oh no, it's definitely not my fault, and somebody else is going, oh, it's definitely not my fault, and somebody else is going, oh no, it's definitely not my fault, and who is sitting there thinking, how do we get what's best for this organisation?
Yeah, because I think it's human nature. As soon as somebody starts pointing the fingers and putting the blame onto people for things, it's people's attitude tends to go from, like you said, how can we fix it, to, well, defence mode, it wasn't me.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, take responsibility for things that are your responsibility and have been identified as your responsibility, but where something has gone wrong and no one is quite sure why, then no, that's not anyone's fault. If we'd got to this point and the answer was the belt was broken, we had put in this process, and the person responsible for replacing the belt hadn't done it, that's a different conversation. But that also brings up a really important point, which is who gets involved. Because Gordon, you're right, there'll be different people there and they'll all be desperately who get into that group to figure out what's going on. It's got to be a safe group. It's got to be a group where, excuse me, it's got to be a group where people feel free to speak up. Now, I have been in organisations where people have come to me afterwards and told me that management reprimanded them for speaking up in a meeting to say what was wrong, because that cast the organisation in a bad light. Fortunately, I wasn't working for the organisation at that point. I was consulting. And I was able to go back to management and go, don't be stupid. If you have a forum where you're asking people to come in and talk about the issues, then have them come in and talk about the issues. Don't formally reprimand them afterwards for saying what they think. That's the whole point of the process. But you do get managers who are incredibly insecure and see any of this as being, and we're back to blaming them. So insecure management can be an issue in all sorts of areas. And they tend to make the absolute worst type of manager. It's never my fault. It's always someone else's fault, no matter what's happened. And if something goes wrong and anybody says anything about it, well, just try and cover it up because I'm such a good manager, nothing could ever have gone wrong.
Yeah, some people just don't take criticism well, even if it is constructive.
Yep. So to do this stuff, you bring in people that would know about it. So if packages are late, you might want to bring in customer service people, and you might want to bring in people that schedule the deliveries. And that actually might end up being a very short meeting, because the people that schedule them can go, well, no, the schedule was there, but the van broke down, at which point you bring in some more people who know about that. So it can be fluid until you get the right mix of people who can properly address the problem. And you might also want somebody who has absolutely, positively, definitely nothing to do with it. Just a facilitator somewhere that can say, hang on, I'm not interested in this. We're just trying to find the answer. And that can be internal or external, somebody from a completely different department who's never going to be involved in this at all. Or someone that you bring in who is good at facilitating that kind of stuff. It should be a tactile thing and people should understand what's going on. So, no computers. Stick a whiteboard up on the wall. Stick one of those big A1 bits of paper and go at it with markers. Also, that people can see what's going on, they understand the issues. And it's important, as I said, that when you're doing that, the outcome isn't confused with the issue. What have I said there? Distinguish the causes from the symptoms. In medicine, there's something called referred pain. At one point, I had a pain in the 2 outside fingers of my right hand. I thought I'd done something to my fingers. As it happened, I hadn't, but I had done something to a nerve in my elbow from memory. And that connects straight down to these 2 fingers. And as soon as I said, I've got real pain in these fingers, I can't do anything with them, I went, oh yeah, you've hurt your nerve. Wouldn't have occurred to me. Pain in my fingers, look at my elbow, what? But for someone that understands it, it's very clear. So my symptom, sore fingers, cause nerve and elbow. And you need to take the same sort of approach with this stuff. Make sure you can clearly distinguish between these things. So understand the logic of what happens and why. And you need to work through it. To start at what went wrong, use your and whys, and maybe add in an and therefore. The battery died. Oh, and therefore the battery wasn't charging. And therefore, oh, and therefore the thing that charges the battery wasn't working. Oh, alternator. The alternator wasn't working. And therefore, so you can try and use prompts like why and therefore and whatever you find useful to try and get to the root cause. And it's a cardinal error to make jumps in your logic. I'm pretty sure I did not use the word ALEXA, and yet it's jumped up and told me all about cardinal errors. Yeah, make sure you have a chain of logic. Go watch some Sherlock Holmes films, or better still, go read some Sherlock Holmes books. There's a chain, a logical chain, and no breaks in it. Don't theorize before the facts. Don't hypothesize without evidence. Don't jump to conclusions. You need facts.
Yeah, what was it? Occam's razor, I think it was. He referenced in that quite a lot. The simplest of theories is normally correct. I think that's basically what it was.
Yeah. In essence, the simplest explanation is the best. If, for example, you go a walk in the countryside and you hear the thunder of hooves behind you, your first thought isn't, man, the zebras are coming to get me. It's more likely to be horses. But sometimes the zebras are more fun, so you want it to be them. So yes, Occam's razor definitely applies. Keep it simple. Make sure you approach the simple issues first. And it's not a witch hunt, so look at the process, not the people involved. And on that, sometimes the root cause is we did everything right, but it went wrong anyway. We did all this, we put in our schedule, the belts are replaced every 6 months, but something still went wrong. And the temptation is to go, oh, yeah, it wasn't put in right. Somebody made a mistake. Fred got it wrong again. But why? Why did Fred make a mistake? Was Fred trained in that van and knew how to replace it, or was he winging it? Did Fred have the proper tools for that van, or was he trying to undo a bolt with a pair of pliers? Was Fred working his second double shift of the weekend and made a mistake? If people make mistakes, there's a reason. And that's just as deserving of getting to the root cause as everything else. It might not be that you can do anything about it. Gordon put sugar on the chips instead of salt. Why? Because Gordon's a numpty. No, we're not blaming people. Okay, Gordon made a mistake. Yes, Gordon made a mistake, but why? Because Gordon has been working 16-hour shifts for a week because there's a bunch of people off with COVID and he's absolutely shattered. Okay, we need more people. And the final thing that you want to do with this technique is always come at it from the point of view, not of you, not of the worker, not of the management, but of the customer. What does the customer need out of this? The customer doesn't care that you didn't understand the replacement schedule for alternator belts. The customer just wants the package when you said you would get it to them. And that's what's important in this process. So it's part of this whole getting better thing, which is what organizations should be aiming at. Any questions about that? Or any other questions, I should say?
Don't think so from me.
And as Gordon and Ed are the only two that ever ask questions, I think. Yeah. Okay. So we've got this idea that we have proper governance, or that we require proper governance. We know that part of that is ensuring that our organisation is the best that it can be. So we have the governance side where we set those goals, but we then have a management side that implements those goals. Now, we said last week that there's a difference between governance and management. So as I said last week, I'm going to use a lot of public sector examples because they're easier to get to. I do have a couple of things I'm going to show you today, actually, from a private company, but they're mainly public sector because they're easy to get to. And one of the things that this organisation have is something called a scheme of administration. It's how things are going to be split up. So we talked last week about people in governance roles, how there should be a mix of skills and abilities, how they would require expertise in particular areas, and how the people that have those skills might be employed in smaller parts of an organisation. And that's what we've got here. So the full board of directors in this case is called a council. So remember, there's different names for it: directors, council, committee, whatever. And there are 33 people in this council. You don't want a meeting of 33 people all the time, taking all the... You don't want to have to get them all together to get all the decisions taken. And there's lots of different things that they need to look at. So what they do is they split it up. The day-to-day running is a subsection of the board called the cabinet. If anyone has any issues with what's going on, there's a subsection of the board for appeals from staff. What if you want to check all the figures, all the finances, and scrutinise everything that's going on? Let's have an audit and scrutiny committee. Let's have a committee that looks after education for those that have an interest in that. Let's have a committee that looks after planning for those that have skills and interest in that. Let's have people that look after hiring other people and have a specific committee for that. So we'll split up responsibilities. Now, these are all subcommittees. They're all responsible to the main board, but it allows them a way to go and take on the day-to-day running in these particular areas. So in another organisation, you might have an HR committee or an IT committee or an audit committee, a finance committee, so that you can have a bigger board with the range of skills that are required, but the board doesn't become so large and unwieldy that it's impossible to get any work done. So that's a possible way to set it up. And what you tend to find is that the governance structure mirrors the management, which mirrors the governance structure, which mirrors the management, which mirrors the governance structure. And that, of course, is my way of saying these things are fluid because you're continually looking for ways to get better. I'm almost certain I just did a lecture on that. So this is a governance side, but there'll also be a management side. For this organisation, that's called a scheme of delegation. And it says what the management can do. What are we going to delegate? The chief executive has responsibility for the operation of all the policies. the head of service for democratic services is responsible for checking the legislation and ensuring that the organisation is compliant with legislation. What was that again? Governance, risk and compliance? Oh, that's built in here too. The delegation will work its way down. So the council delegates to management. That starts at the top at the chief executive, but things are then delegated further. The chief executive doesn't want to know when somebody goes to a training course. So somewhere in between there's other management that do delegate that. Oh, head of service for people, might be called HR elsewhere. So people have specific responsibilities. What about if you're going to spend things? Well, the head of service will also have authorization for expenditure, but there are limits, and those limits will change depending on what it is. The office manager can go out and buy pens and paper and whatever is required. But if you want to buy a new photocopier, it's going to have to be their manager. And if you want to open a new office, it's going to have to be the head. So there'll be varying levels of delegation with varying powers and with varying amounts of money that they can spend without consulting the next one up. So you can see how long this is. There are 79 pages of this to say what is delegated and where. So we get to specific people. The chief executive does this. But they also have compliance issues. So there's, not surprisingly, local government has a whole suite of legislation around it, and the chief executive is het for some of this. For any non-Scots, het is what we call people when you get touched in TIG. We have somebody on democratic services who do legal issues, licensing issues, civil contingencies. Every single council in Scotland has a head of service for democratic services who is responsible for civil contingencies, and every single one of those people worked all weekend. How do I know that? Because we had a storm which had winds of up to 150 miles an hour, and it's their job to coordinate the response to those kinds of things. So I know that they have been working all weekend to cope with those storms. Clearly 80 pages, I'm not going to go through all of this. Feel free to have a flick through. One of the things that they might be specifically responsible for is specific legislation. And some of it you think, Performing Animals Regulation Act 1925. You go, what? But of course, then you have to think about what councils do. Is there a circus coming to town? Will they require a license? Is the circus bringing animals? Are they making sure that the animals are well looked after? In other words, are they conforming to the Performing Animals Regulation Act 1925? So there's a whole bunch of specific legislation, things that has been put in there. In order to ensure that the organisation is fully in compliance with its legislative responsibilities. Not surprisingly, that means that they are usually a lawyer, because it would make more sense to have somebody who's actually trained in the law to be responsible for all these legislative issues. We have other people with delegated powers. They call this one economy and communities. Business support, regeneration, planning. Libraries, education, community empowerment. Okay, so I'm not going to go through that. I'll leave that for you to have a look through. And you might want to find it for your local council and see, compare and contrast whether they are similar or not. Mostly they will be, because of course there is best practice involved. This is how you should do things. And different organisations will have their own powers. So last week we talked about something called the IJB. If you remember, that was a board that comprises people from both the council and the health board, and they're coming together to ensure that people are looked after, not just in hospital or not just at home, but there's actually some joined up thinking there going on with that. But they also have a scheme of delegation. So there's a board, there's a governance board, but there's a scheme of delegation that says who does what. I'm quickly flicking through these things because they are things that you've just seen in the other one. Core concerns, general issues, powers reserved to the board. Not surprisingly, approving budgets. Before we then go on to, eventually, general delegation. And there's training popping up again. And specific delegation, the chief officer, which is the IJB's version of a chief executive. The legislative framework in which they have to work. And other chief officers and their delegated powers. You can probably guess what a finance officer is there to do. And one of the things you should be looking at, so these documents are on Moodle and also on our team, which some people still haven't joined. He hinted, not so subtly. So if you go into Moodle and go down to governance, they're all there, but they're also in the module materials. The very slow module materials. So we're on governance, so not surprisingly there's a governance section and then a whole bunch of pages. Oh, I think it's because I've got it open elsewhere. Yeah, okay. Including the documents that we looked at both last week and the ones that we're looking at today. So there's a scheme of administration, separation of governance and management, scheme of delegation, and so on. Okay, so they're all here. Now, we talked last week about governance and ensuring that people govern for the benefit of the organisation, not for their own benefit. And part of that is ensuring that they make decisions that are best for the organisation and not for them, in a way that we can understand whether that's correct or not, is we can keep what's called a register of interests. If, for example, to take an example out of thin air, a person donates £3 million to a political party and is then purely coincidentally made a lord, then you might want to look at that. Where completely independently 10 people have donated exactly £3 million to a political party, and those 10 people have all been made lords, you might discern a pattern. But part of the way that we can know that this is happening is this register of interests. What did you get and why? Now, don't particularly want the name to be on there because it doesn't matter for our purposes. The point here is they are an IT manager at a company. So if this organisation gave a contract to that company, you might want to check whether this person was involved in that. And it can go into quite some detail. And again, I don't want that particular to be on the video, so I scrolled past it quite quickly, but it was their address. It's where they live. What happens if you're in control of which roads get fixed? And all of a sudden, the people in governance's role, their roads get fixed more quickly. What if somebody invites you to a party, gives you a gift, does something like invites you to the Scotland-England rugby match next week? Surely you'd want to know that, and to know whether the people that paid for that are getting any special favours from the organisation. So there's a whole bunch of things that have to be declared. Similarly, when you award a contract to an organisation, there has to be a whole set of rules around that, how you procure things. It can't just be Tony Gurney walked in and told them that UWS was the best organisation for training, and therefore all training will be done by UWS. No. Pages and pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of rules about how you define what a contract is, how you advertise that it's available, how people apply for it, how it's going to be judged. So before you even let the contract, you'll say things like 50% of this is going to be judged on price and 50% on quality, or whatever the percentages are. There'll be different levels for things that you want to do. If it's less than £1,000, yeah, you can get a single quote, that's fine. Because it probably cost us more to advertise it and sift the quotes and so on. 1 in 5,000, 3 verbal quotes. 5 to 10, 3 written quotes. 10 to 50, you actually go via, and this is a system, this is an online IT system called Quick Quote, where organisations can give quotes for work. And as the amounts get higher, the amount of work that you have to do to ensure that the contract has been let properly increases, as you would hope. Is that okay so far? I've just got a couple more of these documents I want to show you before we take a break. Are there any questions just now?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, not surprisingly, people have tried to formalise these sorts of things. I said to have a look at the schemes of delegation and the codes of conduct and all that kind of stuff to see the similarities and the differences. For public sector organisations, there's going to be a lot more similarities because people are continually looking around to see what they should do. And there's even now an organisation called OCEG who exist to provide best practice for implementing governance, risk and compliance. So they've got a model here, a 122-page book about how you properly implement GRC. And you'll see that it's similar to some of the things that we've been talking about so far. Why we need GRC, who's involved, what's the point, how do we get there, what does that look like? They're not doing PDCA, they're doing LEPR, Learn, Align, Perform, Review. Same kind of idea though. So there's a whole, this is just the first book. They have dozens of these books. And the reason I'm showing you this one is because this is the one they make available free. You have to join the organisation for lots of money to get more stuff. But of course, as we've said before, simply joining the organisation isn't enough, but it shows that you are taking this sort of stuff seriously. So people have tried to codify this either legislatively or by creating codes of conduct. So here's the UK Corporate Governance Code from the Financial Reporting Council. It's not in law, but by following this, you can show that you've tried to perform best practice. And it starts talking about the things that we've been talking about. Who should be on the board, how you divide the responsibilities, the subcommittees that we're talking about. Who should be on there? How do you move them around so you don't have the same people there for 20 years? What about auditing, how that works? Remember, we saw there was an audit committee elsewhere. How do we look at risk? How do we look at controls? And how do we pay these people? So not legislation, but good governance. It's a framework, a good governance framework. Same sort of idea with this one. Also from a Financial Reporting Council, but it's something called the Stewardship Code. In other words, how do you look after your organisation? And it's got a whole bunch of principles that you should follow. And for those who are not sure why they should follow them, here's what we've been talking about all along. So it's not a set of rules, but it does say if you're not going to follow this guidance, explain why not. Now, there may be a good reason, and that's fine. But you should expect to be challenged on it if you don't follow, if you don't comply with these principles. Not only should you have those explanations available, you should put them in the documents that you produce, things like your year-end accounts. So if you're not following the principles, explain it. And if you don't explain it, they'll want to know why. And these are the principles here. I'm not going to read them out. You can read the document later, but they follow the same sorts of things that we've been talking about. Because it's a financial reporting council, it does come very much from a financial side, but that's okay, because a lot of the organisations that we're talking about are businesses, and clearly people don't want to lose their money. So quite often, good governance and good profit come together. Which is what an organisation like Santander want to prove. They want to show that they are looking after the organisation well. They want to prove to people that they are properly governed.
There are some reminders for Tony.
So they actually create a public document that explains the organisation, explains how it's governed, explains the money that they give to people that govern it, how they look after their risk management, how they look after their compliance. It's almost like this stuff is embedded into every organisation in the country, or at least every reputable organisation. So as I said right at the start, this isn't just something that, you know, we've made up in order to make a module out of. This is core to most organisations. Okay, anybody get any questions about that?
Nope, nothing on mine.
Oh, somebody's got feedback. Okay, for those of you that haven't yet joined the team, this is what I'm talking about. There is an assignment. Your next assignment has been distributed, and it's a continuation of last week's. Not surprisingly, it's Governance 2 of 2. And it is talking about what we've been talking about today. So, still on governance, but the need for continuous improvement and the structure required for that. So, same sort of thing as last week. Well, actually, before I go through that, I'm going to, does anyone have any questions before I stop the recording?
Don't think so.
No.
Okay. In that case, let me stop the recording.